Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. I'm Dr. Downey and today we're going to discuss cycles without a testosterone base and what I think about them. First of all, I want to say I'm sorry I haven't been uploading regularly. I will try my best to do so. There are a lot of topics I need to make videos on and a lot of requests I've had from individuals. So I will be trying my best to get back into the swing of things and post more regularly. So I thought I'd start off with this video, whether or not you need testosterone as a base in a cycle, because everyone thinks you always do and it's always the staple to every cycle. So do you need it? The answer is quite obvious, it's no. So one of the reasons testosterone is always recommended as a base to any cycle is that the derivatives of testosterone and DHT derivatives and such are a bit different to testosterone and don't physiologically replace them. So you always kind of, whilst the derivatives will suppress your hormone system, they don't directly, mimic what testosterone does. And therefore you need testosterone as a base or else you won't get your normal physiological testosterone function. So essentially what they're saying is that your mood and sexual function will be dysfunctional without a testosterone base, which is sort of true. Furthermore, not only do the derivatives not really mimic testosterone to a T, they are not estrogenic in the most part, or only mildly estrogenic, and therefore you aren't getting enough estrogen. As we know, testosterone converts to estrogen, whereas things such as like DHT derivatives will not convert to estrogen, and therefore you'll have lower estrogen levels, and it's known that estrogen helps with mood, sexual function, as well as gaining muscle mass. So essentially the argument behind the whole testosterone-based thing is that it physiologically mimics testosterone whilst you are being suppressed, and because it allows estrogen to be produced. For a cycle to work, this is the dumbed-down version. Essentially all you need is an androgen and an estrogen in the basic sense. There are many other hormones, but those tend to be not as important or as obvious when running steroid cycles. Prolactin can be and progesterone can be when you get into 19 nors, but for the most part your androgen and your estrogen are most important. So, as we know, the derivatives such as Deca do not convert to estrogen. And then, if you use the simple approach of you have the androgen, which is Deca, but you need something that's estrogenic, you could use a testosterone base. But back in the 80s, they used to use something like Dianabol, or nothing at all. And for a lot of people, even today, they use Deca only without and something that converts to estrogen or an estrogen base, and their hormonal panels tend to show that their estrogen is fine, or low normal, which is also fine. But that requires you to test it. So what I prefer to recommend is using supplemental estrogen alongside these non-aromatizable compounds if you do not want to run a testosterone base. So in particular, transdermal estrogen would probably be the best supplemental estrogen you could use, and using a dose of 0.0025 milligrams as a patch per week, or you just titrate that up or down according to your blood test results. And you may ask why I recommend transdermal estrogen. Well, this goes back to a lot of the clients I see, and I have written up cycles for individuals who cannot use testosterone. Because I tend to get more complicated cases in which I get older individuals and individuals with risk factors such as previous DVTs or thrombophilic disorders, such as a thrombophilic disorder is a disorder that promotes or puts you at risk of clotting. But these individuals do want to run steroids and are adamant on using steroids, so I want to mitigate their harm. And the way I do this is by making sure they do not use testosterone, because testosterone is contraindicated in thrombophilic disorders, such as previous, or in disorders where a DVT came out of nowhere. You do not want to use testosterone since testosterone converts to estrogen, and estrogen causes something known as E2 thrombophilia. I'll expand on this in another video, but essentially estrogen itself can cause an increased risk of clotting. So that's the last thing you want to use in an older individual, someone above the age of 40 or 45, or with someone with previous risk factors such as a DVT. So whilst most people running steroids are not in these categories, I do prefer to see individuals use safer methods. So instead of using a testosterone base or using oral estrogen, they would use transdermal estrogen. And the reason for this is transdermal estrogen has been shown to not really have a significant impact on DVT risk and thrombophilia in general. This is thought maybe because it doesn't pass through the liver, such as oral estrogen, and that's just a theory behind it. So instead of using an oral estrogen on top of your Deca to replace that estrogen, you would use transdermal estrogen. The only issue with transdermal estrogen is that it doesn't tend to be as favorable on one's lipids as oral estrogen or the estrogen made by testosterone or endogenous estrogen. And that is possibly also due to the fact that it doesn't pass through the liver. So this could be used in the case of oral-only cycles, such as anavar-only, where someone doesn't want to run testosterone alongside the oral because they don't want to inject. I'm not the biggest fan of orals, in particular oral-only cycles, or just orals in general, because they tend to be a bit more harmful than your injectables. But in the case of an oral-only cycle, you could use something like anavar, and alongside it, you use something like transdermal estrogen. Because some people say you could use anavar and HCG, but the problem with that is HCG has to be injected. So this is a possible alternative for people looking into oral-only cycles who do not want to inject themselves, but don't really want to experience the symptoms of low estrogen, which does happen after a while on orals and does tend to lead to their early discontinuation. But as I just mentioned, instead of estrogen, you could possibly use HCG because that stimulates testosterone production in the testicles, and that would essentially create estrogen. So you would use that alongside your Deca or something like that. But the only issue is that the dose response is very variable, and I've noticed with UGL HCG sometimes it isn't dosed accurately, or is just inaccurate in general, or isn't even HCG. So, and it's 500 IUs may give someone a certain amount of estrogen, whereas for another individual it might not. But with something like transdermal estrogen, the dose response is kind of predictable. Furthermore, the evidence is a bit mixed on whether HCG itself can cause thrombophilia, so whilst you may be young, I still take that into consideration. We don't want to put you at risk of clots unnecessarily. So, I'm sorry if this video was all over the place, but in summary, no, you don't need a testosterone base to run a steroid cycle. It's not necessary as long as you keep the two main components of a steroid cycle in place, your androgen and your estrogen, because estrogens are as important in some cases as androgens. They just help you stay a bit healthier and can help you gain muscle. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know what you think about this and whether or not you have ran cycles without testosterone, because there was a point on the internet where testosterone had to be in every cycle ever, whereas nowadays we have ways of bypassing this. So I hope you enjoyed this, and I will look forward to seeing you in the next video.